All right, it's next time. We have examples 1 for section 3. This one says find the value of x that makes line M parallel to line N. Well, let's just see what I have here. I have 105 degrees here, and I have 3x degrees here. Well, what type of angles are those? Yeah, I think they're alternate exterior angles. So if they're alternate exterior angles, and I want to make line M parallel to line M, well, for that to happen, alternate exterior angles have to be congruent. And if they're congruent, their measures are equal. So why not set 105 equal to 3x? In fact, that's what I'm going to do. Solve for x. I use the idea that alternate exterior angles have to be congruent. That means their measures are the same, which means I can set 105 equal to 3x. Boom! X equals 35. Problem solved. Line M, line N now are forced to be parallel if x is 35. Yeah. Example 2. Same question, different problem. Find the value of x that makes line M parallel to line N. Question, what type of angles are those? Well, you should have been able to say they are corresponding. And if I want line M and line N to be parallel, what do corresponding angles have to be? That's right, congruent. If you said supplementary, you're wrong. But congruent, that's right. In fact, if you look, doesn't this angle and this angle look the same size? Well, they have to be if those two lines are parallel. So, why not set them equal? 5x equals 3x plus 60. 5x came from here. 3x plus 60 came from here. So 2x equals 60. I subtracted 3x from both sides, and last but not least, divide by 2. I get x equals 30. There I go. I found x. If x is 30, line M, line N are parallel. It is going to be a huge angle. I realize that if you plug 30 back in, both of those are 150 degrees, and it's drawn as an acute angle. Not to scale. By the way, not to scale means not to the same size, or not drawn to the size it actually is. Alright, find the value of x that makes line M parallel to N. Same type of question, third time going around. I'm guessing I'm setting these two equal based on what I've been doing so far. But let's just make sure. What type of angles do I have? Yes, consecutive interior angles. Those are consecutive interior angles, and consecutive interior angles have to be what to make those lines parallel? Now, if you said congruent, you're right 3 out of the 4 times. However, consecutive interior angles have to be supplementary. In fact, if I look, based on size, they don't look like they have to be congruent. In fact, saying they're congruent happens only once out of basically infinite number of times. So, in this case, they're supplementary, which means, well, consecutive interior angles have to be supplementary. Supplementary have to add up to 180. So I'm just going to say 2x plus 30 equals 180. Because they're consecutive interior, which causes them to be supplementary, which causes them to add up to be 180. Now that I look at this, combine 2x plus x to get 3x plus 30 equals 180. Subtract 30 from both sides to get 3x equals 150. Divide both sides by 3 and you get x equals 50. If you plug it back in, those angles are roughly the right size, but there I go. If x is 50, line M and line N have to be parallel because the consecutive interior angles are supplementary. This is going to be the main type of problem. You have to be able to identify the angles and what they have to be for it to be parallel. A little bit tougher of a problem. Find the value of x that makes line M parallel to line N. Well, I have to identify where line M and line N are. Well, they do end up being these ones here. Line M, line N. Now, I look at this diagram. It is a little bit tough to determine. Am I going to be using the 7x over here? Am I going to be using the x plus 30? Am I going to be using the 2x? Well, if I'm looking for line M and line N to be parallel, I'm looking for the transversal that has a set of numbers on the top and on the bottom, or for line M and line N that is on the same transversal. If I look, line M has an angle here for this intersection, but none for this one. Okay. N has one for each intersection. Now, if I'm trying to show that these two are parallel, I need them to have something for each intersection on a set that's on the same transversal. So if I would use this transversal here, well, this one doesn't have anything I can use, and this one does. I can't show these two lines are parallel just looking at this part. So I'm going to pretend as if this part here isn't there. I should be putting a blue box right there if I'm not cover up that left line P. So now I look at this one. This angle here and this angle here are corresponding angles of this transversal. If I can show that corresponding angles are, gosh, what do they have to be again to make lines parallel? Yes, the corresponding angles postulate, converse postulate, says that they have to be congruent to make the lines parallel. And if these angles have to be congruent, that means their measures have to be equal. So that means 2x equals x plus 30. Subtract x from both sides, and I get x equals 30. It was a little bit hard figuring out what goes where, but once I did, it was real simple. Now, if they would have changed this question to be what value of x makes the line P parallel to line Q, that's when we will be using this transversal, line N, to alternate exterior angles. What would be the value of x that would make line P and line Q parallel? Go ahead, calculate it real quick. If you got x equals 5, you did it correctly. If you have a question on it, please ask during class time, or other times that you can get to ask me questions. Alright, for example 5, it says, for each problem, determine if there is enough information to state that line P is parallel to line Q. If I look real quickly here, diagram 1, diagram 2, diagram 3, diagram 4. Well, if I look at diagram 1, I have 85 and 85 here. Well, I'm given two pieces of information, that's it. Do I know what type of angles 85 and 85 are? If you said alternate exterior angles, good job. If you didn't say anything at all, you're kind of zoning out. Or you didn't pause long enough to answer the question. Those are alternate exterior angles. What do they have to be if those two lines are parallel? Again, if you said congruent, good job. If you didn't say anything, please come back or pause and try and answer these questions before I do. So, if those two have to be congruent, that means they have to have the same measure. Is 85 degrees and 85 the same measure? Well, yeah. So these two here are congruent. Those two lines are parallel. For number 1, parallel. These two here, what type of angles are those? Here's the thing. They're nothing. Nothing special. There's no name for them. If you said something, you're actually wrong. There's actually nothing, no name. The first step in a problem like this, though, is to get angles that match up. So for me, I would find this angle here, because I like vertical angles, they're easier. 85, 85. So now this angle here and this angle here are consecutive interior angles. And what I know about consecutive interior angles is that they have to be what for the lines to be parallel? If you said consecutive interior angles have to be one or supplementary, you are correct. And supplementary, remember, means that the measures add up to 180. So does 85 degrees and 95 degrees add up to 180? Yeah, it does. So if those are supplementary, which they are, then these two lines are parallel. That is actually enough information there to determine if those two lines are parallel. And yes, they can be different numbers. And they can be angles that I don't necessarily know just by sight. Here and here. Well, what type of angles are those? If you said alternate interior, good job. Do they have to be congruent for those two lines to be parallel? Yes, they do. So those two lines have to be parallel because the alternate interior angles are congruent. All I need is one set. Enough. Good. 4. I look at this one. Yeah, I have 2 being congruent. What angles are those, though? If you said consecutive interior angles, good job. Do they have to be congruent for the lines to be parallel? No. They don't. They have to be supplementary. Now, if they are supplementary and they just so happen to be congruent, that's awesome. However, there's only one case of that. Those 2 being congruent doesn't mean those 2 lines have to be parallel. They have to be supplementary for those 2 lines to be parallel. Therefore, number 4 is the only one that I would say not enough information. Okay? Because it could be, honestly, if those 2 are congruent, it very well could be that they are parallel. However, they would both have to be 90, and seeing they're not marked as 90, I'm not going to say they're parallel. So, not enough information.